meeting of the Ojai Groundwater Management Agency at 3:01. Call the roll.
Director Whitman,
Here.
Director Finch,
Here.
Director Daddy,
Here.
Director Thielke, Chair Hages.
Here. All right, we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're going to go to director announcements, and we'll welcome Mr. Whitman as our new member on the board representing the city of Ojai. Do you have any announcements or any comments?
No announcements, just happy to be here and participate in the mission of the board.
This is actually a fun group. Get a lot done in a short period of time, which is nice. Bob, do you have any?
No, I mean, we've got a number of questions, but they're probably for Casitas. They're not for me at this basin.
Okay.
So,
Jim?
We did divert water, or well, I should say the county did divert water into the spreading grounds. It was sedimented up, and they had to dig by hand with shovels after gaining access through a different manner with biologists watching the shovel digging. And I don't have any clue as to how much water they got. I doubt it was much. But San Antonio's, the creek is dropping faster than I would have expected. That's it.
Yeah, it's better than nothing. All right, Casitas, our lake elevation, our lake storage level now is just about, it should be by now at 103,000 acre feet at about 43%. And we've been rising about 500 acre feet a day. It's starting to taper off a little bit. The canal is running, but it's full. The forebay is pretty much gone. We got equipment in and moved the stream back over to the inlet to the canal and blocked the breach on the cutoff wall. And today they were able to get equipment across the creek so we can see if we can clean out the area where the fish screens are. Got 3 or 4 feet of sediment in there, and get that cleaned out hopefully in the next couple of days and increase the amount of water we can take in. Hopefully we get another storm and we can get that thing cleaned out. It's going to be a while before we don't have a basin anymore, so it's pretty hard to control the river. I mean, it's just coming straight at the radial gates on the canal side, but we are able to divert. There's still quite a bit of water coming in from San Antonio or Santa Ana and Coyote Creek. Those contributed the bulk of the water in the first few weeks. So.
Chair, I was asked a question, and since Casitas is up with the current 100,000 odd acre feet, how many years of use is that?
It's at least 5 with no rain at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item, general manager comments.
Just one quick comment. Roberta and I this afternoon met with a bookkeeper. I don't know if you recall, Melissa, who was our previous bookkeeper, had moved out of the area, moved to Thousand Oaks. But as it turns out, this woman and Melissa both know each other, and we talked to her today, and so while she hasn't worked for public agencies per se, she's worked for nonprofits, and she's working for the Land Conservancy, and so she has some good experience, at least in generally how government accounting will be. So we're gonna bring her on board. We'll probably use her this month because we don't have a contract yet, but it's not gonna be a lot of money. It'll be $50 an hour is what she's charging, and we'll bring you a contract at the end of next month's meeting for approval. That's all I have.
Thank you, John. Okay, the next item is basin status report. Okay, Jordan.
Yeah, well, this is the easy part of the year, right? Let me, you see me here in person, you see me out there in the ether on Zoom. I'm gonna share my screen here. And give this little presentation we put together. Just so I can see the presentation. Okay.
Nice heading.
So today we put together a presentation, and thanks to my associate Tim Becker, professional geologist and certified hydrogeologist. Congratulations, Tim, on that recent passage of that certification. Came up with a presentation today of drought to deluge. So we're really here, you know, by the time I finish this sentence, there's more water in storage in the basin than when I started this sentence. And that rate of acceleration is about as fast as I've ever seen. And you'll see some fun snippets of that as we go through here. Obviously, record rainfalls intensity. Someone told me, yeah, in 1969, at my house we got 6 inches of rain one day and 3 inches of rain the next, and that was what really got it. Well, this is exactly what we're seeing here. The comparisons to 1969 are replete. The amount of stream flow is very similar. The amount of geomorphic change is very similar. I think very few among us can remember, you know, some of these types of events, 2005, 1998, without thinking of damage, thinking of boulders in the roads, thinking of creek beds washing out. But that's what 33 inches of rain in the last month will do for you on the ridgetops. It's, of course, about half that on the valley floor. What does it look like out there in the world? This is one of our favorite images right at San Antonio Creek when it first enters the basin. This is about the maximum amount of flow that you see in the creek systems entering the basin, and it infiltrates quickly naturally. Was thinking about this the other day. When we have about 8 to 10 CFS at this point, it all makes its way into the main portion of the aquifer in the basin. When we have more than 8 to 10 CFS, that flow rate exceeds the infiltration capacity of flux of the creek bed capacity. So we're losing water. It's escaping the basin and not finding its way to recharge. So bear with me as we go through the timestamps here and graphics. So it's largely graphical presentation today. Down at Grand Avenue, it's infiltrated some. You can see just to the eye, it looks like a little bit less. And these are just photographs from the other day. You'll notice how clear the creek is, finding its way through the notch in some of the overpass at Grand Avenue. Down looking southward from that, from 150, or upward from 150 rather, northward upstream, you can see it's a little bit less flow than what we had in those previous two slides. Just by comparison, 2nd of December, dry as. But come up to the 3rd of January, and the erosional power is evident. Let me go back just there for a second. But 2nd of December, trees washed away and cleared out in a whole new sedimentary depositional environment with that much water. And that was just the 3rd of January. Come to the 24th and it's a totally different animal altogether. Same view. You want to see that again? Back.
No, I see that a lot.
Yeah, we all see that a lot. That's right. That's a good point, Jim.
That tree is the tree that we're gonna mark, that that skinny one, the tall one in the middle. We're gonna mark that in 2 slides from now.
Sure.
It's gonna be the same view.
There you go.
There, that's that same tree.
Same tree.
Holy mackerel.
Completely denuded all the way around, and we're used to seeing that. But it is the erosional power, and the point of the importance of San Antonio Creek at Grand Avenue is that this is sort of the last to wet, first to dry point. And if it's This is sort of the minimum amount of flow that we typically see when most of that 8 to 10 CFS has infiltrated into the basin between the inflow point at Hermitage and here. Going down, we talked a little bit about the spreading grounds. The image on the left, upper left, is of the spreading grounds diversion. You can see plenty of water in the creek, and one of our former associates, Mr. DeJong of now Rincon Consultants and consultant to the county, took this video and sent it along to us. Oops, let me see if I can play that for you. All right, it's having a hard time playing this video, but that's what the spreading grounds looked like as they were diverting one of those weekends that Director Finch was describing. It's one of those issues where you see the water coming through that portal, and that's into Basin 1, and you can see how turbid that water is. The 4 ponds here really intend as much to desilt the water as they do infiltrate it, and then by the time it gets to Basin 4, it finds the passive recharge wells. And I don't have a full number on what was diverted, or if any made it to the recharge wells, but I do know that they were limited to daylight hours of diversions only to account for the fish biologists that needed to look at said diversions. Now that's San Antonio Creek's, of course, the big gorilla in the room, but McNeil, Thatcher, and Reeves all have some inflow, and those ones can infiltrate, similarly along their pathways before they get into the southwestern uppermost saturated zones. So what does that mean for recharge? You can see by comparison to 2021, 2022, and 2023, the amount of rainfall just seems to have increased over the past couple of years, almost linearly, the way that it looks. And we're not done yet, of course, with 2023. But what that does to the basin is up there in the San Antonio Creek spreading grounds area are the uppermost graphs, and we see massive spikes, potentially in part due to the spreading that may have made it into the aquifer here at this point, both naturally along San Antonio Creek and, of course, through the recharge project. Down in the south central area where we have the other depth discrete monitoring well, we've got the perch system in the bright yellow there that shows its relatively level status, and then a peak, and then also a decline. But in the main portions of the basin, both at the Elrod well and in the deeper casings of the south central depth discrete monitoring well, we're still well on the rise. And the acceleration at the Elrod point it's unprecedented with respect to the time frame that we've had that logger in that well. As we put this on that chart that we have in greater scale, the key is that basin flow, that San Antonio Creek flow across the basin as surface flow has been pretty near contiguous since late December. We're seeing some pretty high CFS at the discharge point that we're able to measure, in excess of 10 CFS, which is not small, leaving the basin. And we sort of see a little bit of a gradual increase of that commensurate with the upper system prior to the full cross basin flow. In the Keywell area, we have at 171.55 feet as of this week, or about 66% capacity of the basin at 52,800. You can see how we're getting pretty close to last year's peak pretty quick. All right, one of the things we like doing is seeing the venting of the wells, and unfortunately I'm getting a cannot play media here with this one, but we'll see. That vent tube just to the right of that cone is where our logger is located and how we get water levels out of the Elrod well here. The beauty of it is when I first got there to this well, there's a little hole, and it was actually whistling at me. The way that it was sounding was like a little whistle as air was being compressed above the water table in the well and just squeezing out through that port. And then when I removed that cap, you could see and feel the air coming out and see it blow the blades of grass that are there in the foreground. So this is an interesting video. I think what I'd like to do is probably share this with Roberta, and you can post a link to it so that one can visit the website and see this kind of venting in action, because it's pretty cool. What this means as far as the surface water response to the basin outflow, 2nd December, when we saw those dry pictures at Grand Avenue Bridge, we measured about 0.15 CFS at San Antonio Creek at the outflow, 0.3 out of Montgomery Creek, 2.27 in the 3rd of January CFS, and 0.62 at Montgomery Creek, and then just the day before yesterday, 18.12 CFS flowing out of the basin. That's the very bottom line number there. I don't know if you can see it too well. And 5.68 feet coming out of the western portion in the city area through that drain. That's quite a bit of water coming out of the basin, and it's finding its way, of course, further downstream in San Antonio Creek. This is a much more manageable flow than the thousands of CFS we were seeing during the peaks of the storm. So this is what that looked like in August, going 4th of December, coming up, and on the 24th. So that portion of the basin, of course, is much thinner. It's mostly overlying either bedrock or the perching clays. This is where we usually would measure the flow back in August, just a trickle. By the 2nd of December, starting to come back a little bit. But by the 24th of January, the morphology has totally changed. We're needing to measure the creek flow in a totally different area than we had been because of this deposition and rescouring of this channel. The alluvium is still very thin here. We can probably excavate manually down to where bedrock is. So most of that flow that we're measuring, and will be probably for much of the remainder of this year, will find this channel. You can see velocities in the 3.2 feet per second of that cross-sectionally the other day. Now, one thing we've taken a look at for a while is how the county gauges respond. And I like this graphic because it was just a screenshot of the flow in the creek at Old Creek Road that I took on the evening of Tuesday the 10th of January. And you can see where the observations and the predictions were and how much more in line they are at these higher flow rates. When that flow was actually in the 6,000 to 7,000 CFS rate, it's a lot more accurate. The predictions are a lot more accurate, and the gauges themselves are a lot more accurate than when we're talking about the marginal sub 5 CFS flows, and when they're reporting 4, but there's actually 0 at these types of locations. So the county gauges are doing what they're intended to do as far as flood warning, action flows, and the like. But when it comes to quantifying the discharge, that needs to be obviously corrected over the hydrologic year. So we are hoping that we're predicting returning soon to a water well near you in Ojai after 12 years of absence, are artesian conditions. The last time we saw wells act like this at this time with this kind of precipitation was 2011, and we fully expect to see at least some wells in the valley flowing under artesian pressure with even just a small amount of rainfall to come over the rest of the winter. So, questions?
So you often give a percentage, I thought.
Yeah, and we gave that in the a couple of slides back. Click to exit this.
I had to read it up there, then it was
60 odd something.
Yeah,
too small.
right. I'll bring the graphic back up here, but 66% capacity. There's still a ton of room in the basin. So it's,
Okay.
let's see, can you see that?
What percentage did we start at?
So the last nadir of, in November 4th, 2022, we had 196.45 feet. And we've come up you know,
25.
25 feet plus to where we are now. And again, that was only 2 days ago, and it's certainly risen since. The trajectory is significant.
I'm actually amazed we're not up higher.
And what acre feet capacity do we think we had in November? Is there a way to figure that out?
Let's see, I might be able to pull that up here.
It'd just be interesting to see how many acre feet we got.
No, that's a really good number to know.
I was watching the numbers at Matilla, over 25,000.
Yeah. So on November 4th,
That's
I think we
50,000
had,
acre feet a day.
yeah,
40.
I think we had 60% or 48,000 acre feet on November 4th. And, you know, if we're at 66%, we've come up 6%. And, you know, all of, what is that, 4,800 acre feet, reaching this portion of the basin thus far. And there's typically a month of lag time between the precipitation and the peak. So if we see the peak of that event, not necessarily the year as a whole. So I would expect these conditions to continue rising through early February, if not mid-February, and by Valentine's Day, probably have most of the water that fell in early January having reached this portion of the basin. So when we meet again in the end of February, we should have some pretty good numbers on that as well.
Just based on that slide, that's about a year's worth of extractions from the basin.
Anyone have any more questions?
So 6,000 acre feet a year is about a year's worth?
About 4,000. 4,000,
4,000, okay.
plus or minus,
Depending on rainfall, right?
certainly.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, the next item is public comments on items not appearing on today's agenda. Is any public that have any comments on Zoom or in the audience? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the first action item. Let's see.
Wait.
What?
Could I make a question?
Yes.
Hi, this is Renee.
Oh, hi, Renee.
Hi, and it just goes back to what Jordan was talking about, and it kind of ties in with Casitas levels. I know lots of people are, wondering where we're at with our water supplies. And I've asked this before about, is there a way, and I know you typically do it at the end of the water year. You talk about how we did. I think a lot of people are just excited to know we had a lot of water and what that means to our water supplies. So if we were to say back at that chart that you just put up, Jordan, 52,800 acre feet of water. And if we were to look at the demands, the average demand, say over the last 5 years, how much water supply that would turn into on an annual basis. If there's any way to start getting that kind of information, it might be nice and helpful to have people see that rather than just numbers or acre feet, we can see it in terms of what our supply is and how it relates to our demand at some point in time.
13
It'd be nice
years.
to have that information. Thank you.
Any other comments?
This is Emily Ayala on Zoom.
Hi, Emily.
I just wanted to say I went out twice when they were out at the spreading grounds with the county folks, and I just wanted to comment how excited they were to be there and get the system tested. I know it's not perfect, but the whole point of it was that we got the feds okay to test the system. We tested it. We figured out some issues. They're going to come out with a report, and it was just exciting to see it finally working. And I can just hear Jim Roosh and Jerry Conroe and some of the old timers clapping that we finally got it put to use, and with the data they collect, hopefully we'll be able to use it more as years come. Even though it probably wasn't a huge acre feet put in the ground, it's something, and I was so glad to see it in use.
Oh, thank you, Emily. Any other comments? Okay, we're gonna move to the first action item, which is annual report proposal by Dudek.
Yeah, we're gonna have Trevor give you a brief presentation on this from Dudek. But as part of the groundwater sustainability plan requirements, groundwater sustainability agencies are required to do an annual report and submit that to the Department of Water Resources by April 1st, I think. Yeah, Trevor's nodding his head, so I was right. So we're bringing this item before you to approve having Dudek do that report for us. They did it last year as well. However, I would like to recommend moving forward that OBGMA keep Dudek on retainer. And of course, when they come forward annually for this, they could give an estimate of cost for the report. But the second item on the agenda also speaks to activities that Dudek is doing, and some of those were not specifically laid out. Originally, they've been submitting data on behalf of OBGMA to the Department of Water Resources, and those are activities that need to go on. There's data has to be submitted to DWR both in the spring and in the fall, and so we need to continue to do that, and there's coordination with Jordan on that. So having something in place, an annual contract that they can just bill for their services would be very helpful, so we can continue to go to Dudek to get that assistance. So Trevor, if you'd like to give a little overview of the annual report.
Yeah, absolutely. And I apologize, I actually don't have a slide on the annual report, but I'm more than happy to discuss the different components of what's described in the proposal, what we did last year, and kind of what the agency should be prepared for as the GSP implementation moves on. So as John mentioned, the GSP regulations require each GSA to submit an annual report to DWR annually. And that report is due April 1 of each year. It reports on basically every type of water resource related component in the basin that influences groundwater conditions and long-term sustainability. So that would be the availability and importation of surface water served within the basin, any recycled water used in the basin, how much groundwater has been extracted, and then importantly, what do groundwater conditions look like? How have groundwater levels changed? How has groundwater storage changed? And how has the balance between supplies and demands mapped onto the sustainability indicators that are described in SGMA? So the proposal that we've included in the board packet outlines the individual requirements of the report. There's the general data reporting components where we summarize precipitation over the last water year, surface water flows over the last water year, groundwater elevation hydrographs and contours, and then the summarization of groundwater extractions and importation, surface water imported and served in the basin. And then lastly, there's an estimation of storage change. So the way that we did it last year was we looked at using the numerical model developed for the basin in conjunction with water levels measured in the basin to estimate how much storage has changed in a way that maps directly onto what's reported in the GSP. So it's something that is used kind of in conjunction with what Jordan's been doing currently. They're very similar methods, not exactly the same, but it is something that's directly comparable to what's reported in the GSP and then what would be reported annually to DWR prior to the first 5-year periodic evaluation. So that's the overview of the annual report, and that's kind of everything that goes into action item A. I'm happy to discuss part B, which I do have some slides on, some additional activities we've done over the past kind of month and a half, or I can pause right now and answer questions about the proposal, whatever the board would prefer.
Just real quick, Trevor, this will capture, if I recall, January 1st through December 31st?
The annual report?
Annual report.
It's actually the
water year?
So, yeah, so it would be October 1, 2021 through September
Okay.
30th,
All right,
2020.
so all the good news that we heard today from Jordan will not be in this report.
It will not, no. It will be a nice kind of baseline for how this last storm has impacted groundwater conditions in the 2023 water year, but it will not reflect current groundwater conditions.
Does the board have any questions, comments?
Is it gonna get cheaper every year as you get better at it?
Hopefully, yeah. I mean, definitely there's some component. Last year we worked through estimating groundwater extractions and communicating with Casitas. We developed that groundwater storage estimation method. So as we continue to prepare these, yeah, I think we will be getting more and more efficient.
Good.
I have a question. Is the 2022 report, is that closed out as far as the state is concerned? Has that been finalized? I know they had wanted clarification on some issues.
I am not as familiar with the feedback from the state on the 2022 report, but as far as I'm aware, it's submitted and publicly available on DWR's Sigma portal. And that's the extent to which it would be closed out. That data is published and has been reported on.
Are you referring to the report or the GSP, the groundwater plan that we submitted?
I think I'm referring to the plan, actually, yes.
We have not received feedback from DWR on the submittal of the groundwater sustainability plan. I did get an email today that they did approve 3 plans. I think they're all up north. But we're still waiting at this point, and I don't know when that's gonna occur. I don't know if there will ever be any feedback on the annual reports. And maybe unless it's not, unless they view it as not, doesn't meet the conditions of the annual reporting, I assume they're not gonna say anything at this
Right.
point. So.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, I think you,
I'd move that we proceed with retaining DUDAC.
Second?
call the roll.
Second?
Director Whitman,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Daddy,
Yes.
and Chair Hages?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item B,
Yeah, let me share my screen now and it will be a far less exciting discussion. Oh no. Can everyone see my screen okay now?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. My computer has been freezing. So I was saying, I'm going to give a very high level overview, hopefully just 5 minutes, what we've been working on and supporting the agency over the last month and a half. It really is going to be quick. Going to touch on really three main components. We submitted the SGM, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Grant Program application to DWR in the middle of December. I'll give an update on when that was actually submitted, how it compared to the deadline. And then I'll provide an update on the project list. There was feedback in the board meeting in early December on prioritization of these projects. So I'll share where we landed on that, give an update on the fall water level uploads, and then what is the agency should anticipate coming down the pipeline. Okay. So high-level overview. We submitted the application to DWR on December 15th. That deadline for submittal was the 16th. So we got it in a day ahead of time, no issues with the submittal process. The application itself was submitted with 3 letters of support. One was from Casitas Municipal Water District, one was from the City of Ojai, and then another from the Ojai Water Conservation District. So those were all included as attachments to the grant application. Basically noting the agency's support of OBGMA, or the different agencies' support of the OBGMA's pursuit of these grant funds. Again, a high-level overview of the project ranking as they were presented in the grant application. Before I get into the rank, why these ranks matter is DWR in their PSP for this and their discussion of awarding funds for these grant applications noted that if an agency or a submitting agency is not awarded its entire grant request, DWR will award requests based on the project ranking or prioritization provided in the application. So we've got 11 different components of the grant application project as a whole. Up at the top would be the groundwater extraction metering and GDE evaluations. And then right below that is the grant administration. There was feedback from the board to move that up. It was originally down at the very bottom of the list. We moved it up to rank 3 to basically hit this limit that DWR has on the total grant administration costs not exceeding 10% of the grant award or grant request. And this $100,000 administration request falls right at the 10% threshold with these other 2 components at the top. We also received feedback of moving the feasibility evaluation for San Antonio Creek spreading grounds up. This is kind of falls nicely into what was just presented on the operations at the spreading grounds. And that falls behind, again, the annual reporting, which these are the annual reporting and monitoring costs are costs that the agency is going to need to incur over the next 5 years for GSP implementation. That's just collecting water levels, collecting water quality samples, preparing GSP annual reports. So all of that is kind of a requirement. And then we move down the extreme climate scenario simulations again, based on feedback from the last board meeting. Right now, everything's kind of in a standstill. DWR has noted in their solicitation package that they anticipate draft award lists being released in April and May, at which point the DWR and the agency will need to interact on kind of final grant agreements and contracting and all of that fun stuff to follow. Additionally, after submitting that, we, in the last few weeks, have uploaded fall water levels to DWR's Sigma monitoring network module. So Ventura County provided their water levels to OBGMA at the beginning of January. If you now go on to Sigma's data viewer, you will see that the latest fall levels are uploaded and available for public review. We're working on finalizing all of the levels. We're still missing a few data points, and when we receive that data, we will upload that to DWR's website as well. And this again is part of the Sigma regulations require a semi-annual upload of water levels to Sigma's monitoring network module. And then the last slide, what's to come. Again, we just talked about the annual report that's due April 1. We will get running on that and provide an opportunity for the agency to review and provide comment on that annual report before it's submitted to DWR. Again, it covers changes in groundwater conditions over the 2022 water year. Also coming down the pipeline are spring water level uploads. So kind of 6 months farther down the line, these are small tasks, would be the collection and reporting of water levels that are measured in the basin by July 1st. And then the big question mark is the level of effort that will be required for supporting administration and the agency's agreements with DWR in the event that the state awards grant funding to help support GSP implementation in this basin. Again, we'll keep an eye on when that starts coming in and solicit the agency's input on ways that we can support and continue to help implement the GSP for the Ojai Basin. And with that, I'm going to stop talking and be happy to answer any additional questions about what we've been doing over the past few months.
Any questions? I just had one. How much is the how much did we apply for item number 1, the metering?
The metering was, let me go back to it. It was 200,000. Okay. So that would cover, and included in that are costs for new meters, costs for stakeholder outreach, costs for reporting. And I forget the exact number of meters. Maybe Devin, if you're online, you remember the total number, but somewhere ballpark around 100, I believe.
We typically say we have about 154 wells.
Mm-hmm.
So, and some of those are metered, but some aren't.
Yeah.
And as part of this process, if I recall, Trevor, the thought was trying to get all those meters consistent. So even the ones that are metered, we would probably put new meters on those wells also.
Yeah, that's what I remember as as well.
At least plan for it. Whether we do it or not is another question.
Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, thank you for the report.
Thank you, guys, and turn it over back to you.
All right, the next item is well permit application. I see Peter's not here. Does he still want to do it?
Yeah, I was gonna
Could I-
interrupt this presentation with a commercial break, but
Oh, okay.
Could I back up a little bit? John, I thought you said something about a retainer for DUDAC in that second part. Did I miss?
Yeah, I did. Typically, what happens with many public agencies, they hire an engineer to do work, and just like Cure groundwater. So you get their rates. The board approves a contract that allows staff to say, "Hey, I need some assistance," and it's usually under. You keep it to a maximum amount of dollars. The annual report I see is coming back for a separate approval. But some of these data submittals and things that go on, interaction with Jordan that needs to be done, we should have some approval to pay for that.
So do we need them to first propose something for a retainer? Which, chicken or egg, I guess?
Well, and it wouldn't be a retainer per se. We
Not a
wouldn't be-
retainer,
yeah.
whatever you.
Contractual, we would, the board would have a contract come forward. There would be a table of their fees and charges related to whoever they use in the work. And so whether it's senior engineers, regular engineers, secretaries,
I guess
reproduction.
that comes back to my chicken or the egg. Do we need them to come to us with
Well,
that, or
I would.
or based on what they have submitted on this one? Are you looking for something?
No, I would expect DUDEC to provide us a letter with their fee table.
Okay.
And then maybe we can get it in some kind of contractual form. So
Okay.
Trevor, we got to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're more than happy to prepare something like that and bring it for the board's consideration at the next board meeting.
Yeah, I think typically we would authorize the general manager to have a limit on how much funds he could commit to in a month.
Yeah.
And we can do that at the next meeting.
Now, are we done? Or is Trevor still presenting?
No, he's
he's
finished.
It's done. Can I go back just a minute, John? My numbers are all over the place. We have 154 active wells. That's what we think our base number is.
Yeah, that's generally, I mean, they go up and down a little bit depending on whether a well is not active at a certain time based upon basin levels can cause some wells to run out of water. But there's usually about 154 reporting each year.
Okay, that's the key I was looking for, reporting. Okay.
Okay. All right, item C. Jordan, are you gonna address that?
no, I was just gonna. We were able to get the videos up, so if you want to take a
Oh,
quick peek
okay.
at that,
Sure.
watch the San Antonio Creek spreading grounds in action. Let's see where they were
Now you lost it.
sharing. They would.
And we're entitled to about 900 acre feet a year out of this thing? Is that the number I read?
Oh, I think in a good year you'd get 400.
Whoa.
So there's the flow going across from the berm between ponds 1 and 2, not yet making its way to 3. And then just real quick, we can go over to the sync this up too. So there's the blowing sounding tube. Blowing the leaf, the blades of grass along. It's a thing of beauty.
Yeah, it's a lot better when it goes the other direction.
This direction, yeah. Right. Yeah, it's the joy of fluid dynamics in action. So, thank you for that brief interruption. Since those videos didn't work during our previous presentation.
All right, thank you, Jordan. All right, this well application are we gonna consider that, or?
Yes, it's on the agenda for your consideration tonight. I don't know if anybody is either online or in the audience to speak to this permit, but Senior Canyon Mutual Water Company has requested an approval of a well that would provide 250 acre feet a year, serving about 800 people, 206 residents, and about 5 institutional metered services. As it turns out, and this well is not within the GSA, Groundwater Sustainability Agency, but it is within the jurisdictional boundaries of OBGMA. So we would still have authority to move forward on this. Since it's essentially a municipal well, it's not subject to the governor's order, the executive order that was approved last year. So both municipal, and there was one other category that are exempt. I think meters under 2 acre feet a year for residential use, for domestic use. So it's before you to ask comments or questions the best that I can respond to at this point, unless someone from Senior Canyon is here. Otherwise, it's requesting the board to move forward and approve this.
John, is this 250 acre feet in addition to water we're supplying now, or are they just going to be a new well that replaces, or what's going to be the additional use that they're going to have?
Based
if
upon
any?
the application, it's my understanding it will be 250 acre feet additional. It's a new well, it's not a replacement well, but it could, at this point, I don't see that 250 acre feet being additional right off the bat. My guess is they're gonna be a lot like the Community Services District and alternate wells when they need them.
Yeah, but
I think gives them some backup.
that's the thing. Wells don't use water. Things use water. So it's unfortunate they're not here. My guess is it's backup because, like so many of us, their wells are old. So even though it doesn't say replacement, it would all depend on if there was new building in that thing or planting. And that I haven't seen out in that area. So, but I can't speak to it.
It is a bedrock well, and the 250 acre feet, it seems like it will be a ceiling rather than a average or normal out of a well like this, based on my experience in that neck of the woods. So it's sort of outside, I mean, it is outside of the alluvial portion of the basin, and so when we calculate the safe yield of the basin or the extractions from the basin as part of the GSA, this well in particular would be excluded.
But there isn't, we don't have any information. I assume they're not building a new housing tract up there, but
I don't know where.
is it new plantings?
I don't know where.
I think it's
Just back up.
backup type thing.
Can I suggest if the board wants to approve it subject to getting that clarification? We could do that, it's up to you.
I'd like to make a motion now, being very familiar with that area and the people up there and everything. We're not going to have subdivisions and explosions, and we're not going to be adding huge amounts of acreage because it's just not there. So I'll make a motion that we approve as submitted, even without the representatives from Senior Canyon. It may be that they need it because that little pond they've had has been very dry for a very long period of time, and so has that upper pond. And so,
I'll second it.
Any other comments? If not, we can call the roll. Go
I
ahead.
just have a question. So is it part of our role to determine whether this
approval would meet the reasonable beneficial requirements, or is that not part of our role?
That's typically not our role as an agency. You know, we monitor the groundwater, report on the groundwater. Technically, the county of Ventura is the one that really approves the well. But they also asked that OBGMA weigh in on that when a well goes in. And so in this case, since it's exempt from the executive order, they don't have to do additional work. Unless the county comes back and says something, they shouldn't have to do any additional work. Normally, under the executive order, the governor's executive order, if a well has an extraction of this level, they would be required, the owner would be required to do some analysis, both looking at, is it consistent with the Groundwater Sustainability Agency's plan? And is there interference to any nearby wells? Well, it's their own wells, so if they have interference, they're gonna have to work around it.
Yeah, so I second,
And this thing is 250 acre feet. You've got 208 residences, and you've got 5 other buildings, and wow, that's a little over an acre foot a year. That's almost.
Well, I do know that they've had some real difficulties the past 2 years. I mean, their existing facilities have not been able to produce enough. They've had to buy water from Casitas, so I think this was an effort to try to supplement what they had there.
and as I say, wells don't use water, things use water. So I'm for seconding it based on the fact that it is an exemption one. And what we know of that area. And third, and I think almost most importantly, is where it lies in Jordan's comments on the bedrock. It's not in our alluvial.
Any other comments?
And that's if they can get the 250.
Yeah.
It will be reported.
Want to call the roll?
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Whitman,
Yes?
and Chair Hedges.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is financial reports for November and December.
Yeah, I'll just give you a brief update on that. November, at the end of the November month, we had $90,136 in cash accounts. Expenses for that for November were $7,100, which the larger expenses included legal, payroll, insurance, were the 3 items that were making up the majority of that. We had deposits of $17,371 for November. December, at the end of December, the cash balances were $87,749. So we had about a $3,000 expenditure, $2,387 actually, but we did have a little bit of revenue. Largest expense for December was payroll. That's all I have.
No extraction fees.
Not yet.
December. It'll be that
Well,
way for a while.
January.
Yeah.
Roberta, yeah, you've sent out statements? Okay, so, yeah, pretty much November, December is kind of the end of the reporting, the actual payment period for the extraction fees
The deadline is February 1st for remitting.
for the previous quarter? No, I'm talking about the
Yeah.
previous
December.
quarter.
Yeah, for October to December is what was sent out.
Oh, okay, so, but you get a majority of that early on, like, yeah,
Already.
okay.
LA Casitas is paid, so we're good now.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that. Well, one problem is I've been in the water business all my life, and it's a lousy business because it's the only business you're in where your product falls periodically from the sky for free. So we're going to be, Casitas and the OBGMA are going to be hurting with all of this rain.
Well, and that's what I'd like to tell, back when I worked at another agency, I had a city council member say, well, we should give water to people. They have a right to it. And I said, well, the water's free. They're just paying for us to move it around.
All right, if there's no other business,
Just need to accept and file the financial
oh,
reports.
yes. You have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Second.
Call the roll?
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Whitman?
Yes.
And Chair Hages?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, no further business. Meeting is adjourned.